Welcome back to Journey Map, the Craft&Crew podcast where we dive deep into the leading minds behind the world's top creative agencies and industry experts. My name is Dave Hale, and today I'm joined by special guest, Max Maharajh, Managing Director of Be a Bear. In this episode, we discuss the agency's acquisition by the Spin Group, building an audience-obsessed YouTube specialty practice, and Max's journey from frustrated English lit student to accidental agency founder. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Be a Bear was founded out of frustration with agencies that didn't truly understand audience growth. Having sat on the client side, the founders knew that the most important thing to grow a business was an engaged audience, so Be a Bear was built with audience obsession at its core. Based in London, the agency specializes in YouTube, operating as a trusted YouTube partner with direct access to platform resources, insights, and early product updates. Their work spans organic channel management, advertising, and audience development with a focus on driving revenue and engagement for ambitious brands. And they are pretty ambitious. The client roster is heavily media and entertainment led, including MTV, Channel 5, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, SpongeBob SquarePants, Sidemen, Red Bull, BC1, Speedo, BMG, and Pius, among others. In 2025, Be a Bear was acquired by the Spin Group, with our guest staying on as managing director post-acquisition. Max Maharajh, welcome to Journey Map.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm going to have to cut out the audio of you explaining the business because I think you've just done it better than I've ever done it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's what you don't normally get a cheat sheet in front of you. Well, when you're just trying at a party, trying to tell someone what you do. So
yeah, that's really hard.
So it's wonderful to have you on. We've had so many guests from the UK, especially a few lately. So for whatever reason, we're attracting you folks, and so great to have you. So we're going to start at the beginning, but obviously where your story currently culminates in is this acquisition to the Spin Group. So I did actually want to start there because I think it'll provide some context and backdrop as we kind of go back to the beginning. So why it was about a little less than a year ago that the acquisition happened. So why was it the right time for you at that point in your journey to sell, Max?
It's something so again, like you say, at parties, it's a conversation that's come up a lot. At weddings or dinner parties or birthdays over the last year or so with friends of mine. And I think looking back at the last year of being part of the Spin Group versus the couple of years prior to that as operating and being the majority shareholder of Be a Bear, like the last year is really noticeably different. And I think what I had a lot of myself coming up to the acquisition was I was quite frustrated. So it was about three and a half years ago, we decided as a business that we were probably about 3 years ago now, we decided as a business, we were going to focus on YouTube and we were really going to, so we did this audience development thing. We knew we were audience obsessed since the start, but we really focused on YouTube as being like the primary channel in social media world we were going to focus on because we kept competing with people like our housemates, for want of a better phrase, Spin, who are very good at social, but we kept competing with great social media agencies for all these briefs. We kept losing them, but we were winning a lot on YouTube. And we went through a process of unfortunately having to lose some great people from the business that I've stayed close to and still mates with, but we just didn't need that skill set in-house anymore. And we thought, look, we're going to really focus on our profit. We're going to really focus on YouTube channel management. We're going to do a little bit around that, but that's going to be the angle for the business. And I was quite exhausted by it all. And the conversation, I had a conversation with a few different businesses who were looking at doing a very similar thing to the guys at Spin. The conversation with Spin, and I think the reason that now, just after a year of being married, for want of a better phrase to it, we've also as a group acquired another business in that time, and we've got some other things coming up in the future. But it feels so much better because you have business partners and you have guys who are driven by the same ambition. We're all trying to be, for us, the number of the thing we always said when we're going through it. So the founders of Spin and myself is like, we need it to be 1 + 1 has to equal 3. Like we always wanted to focus on how do we be bigger than the sum of our parts. And that was, I think that it was the right time for me on a very personal level as well. We were expecting a kid. I actually think we had a baby and I got the final draft SPA, so the agreement for the sale of the business 2 days after my son was born. So it was all a bit of a whirlwind for for a month or so. But yeah, it was a good time to do it.
It'll be a time in your life you'll never forget, for sure.
Yeah.
So, Max, thanks for that context. So you had a significant number of jobs leading up to the founding of Be a Bear. And we're going to get into that. We're not going to go one by one because that would literally be the whole episode, would just be reading the resume. But what I wanted to start with is, as we go through, our audience is going to see like there's a real lean towards kind of media and entertainment, kind of businesses that you worked for, brands that you worked for. You graduated with a bachelor's in English literature. So where does this kind of like, I mean, it's a bit of a silly question because obviously a lot of people love media and entertainment, but like for you, was this an intentional path that you went down in terms of kind of getting into those types of industries? Or was this, from as you're doing that English lit degree, you're like, when I graduate, I'm going to pursue this industry intentionally?
So before we started recording, that I am always very, very transparent and honest. And I really didn't want to go down this route. No, really. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write interesting things. My English degree was really focused. My dissertation was on queer literature. I did a lot around late modernist poetry. I really, really liked that kind of idea of being able to like write satire. I wanted to write novels. I reckon I've probably got like 2 unfinished books that are going around. One of them, which I'm actually quite kind of picking up. I'm going on a tangent, but it's worth it. Is writing I've got a bit of a weird family background, which has bled into the reason I went down this route career-wise. I come from a very mixed background of like Austrian, Irish, Scottish and Indian. And I'm also fascinated by killer whales. So I wanted to write a book that kind of marries up killer whale culture with the mixed cultures of different family history.
Yeah.
That's a different podcast. So don't worry about that. We'll do that in future. My parents both worked in what I would say was quite low rent publicity. So like reality TV stars and tabloid personalities were the sort of people that they had around. And that, I wanted to get quite far away from that. But unfortunately, when I started trying to get work experience places, they were the sort of people that I could get work experience with. And I thought, if you want to write stuff, like it's good to be around the TV industry. It's good to be around that space. One thing led to another. And I got my first job. I actually dropped out of my English lit degree for my first job at Psycho Entertainment with a great team at the time, but reporting into Simon Cowell. And that does, in a weird way, kind of like set you off on a path. And after that, it becomes surprisingly easy to pick up entertainment jobs, very difficult to pick up highbrow, artistic, theatrical job. Yeah, looking at it now, I'm pretty proud of a lot of the stuff we have achieved and the world that we're in. But it was definitely not the intention at the start.
Yeah. So Sony Music, you mentioned Psycho, Simon Cowell's, I guess it would be like an imprint at Sony. So Sony Music, Simon Cowell, there for about a year. Twin Rocket, WMA Global for, again, about a year. Facebook, also another cool stop, 6 months. Back to WMA for another year or so. Lad Bible for 6 months or so. And then Candy Kittens for a year or so. And then you found the business. So, again, it's the resume speaks for itself. Like you said, once you kind of got in at Simon Cowell's imprint, like it leads to, I'm sure, easier ability to get into those other places that you wound up in. I am curious why the classic, I actually don't know if you're a millennial or a Gen Z, depending on where you fit in there, but if you are a millennial, take it as a compliment. You look too young to be a millennial, but the kind of classic, like, yeah, I've worked at like 6 places, 7 places in the span of 4 years, basically. So what do you think was the cause of all that jumping around? Was it because there were just opportunities to chase after? Were you unsettled, not inspired? Like, what was the rationale for all those moves?
I think I was really, really unsettled. I look back at the history a lot. To be honest, I'm quite self-conscious about it. And I was talking to my wife recently. We've been together 11 years tomorrow, but for all of that time, she's had like one job and the same company, same thing she's been doing. until she went on mat leave a while ago. But yeah, anyway, she's done one thing. I am the worst employee in the world. And I have told people that on the way into things because I want I want things to be bigger and better. And it's not necessarily like I don't go into a job and say, hey, look, I'm going to come in as your digital marketing manager. I'm expecting to drive a Porsche and be paid like whatever salary. It's not like that. It's just, I get frustrated that I couldn't do a lot of the things that I wanted to be able to do because of corporate structures or things moving too slowly. Like hands down, Facebook was probably the worst place I've ever worked for me. I've got a lot of friends who worked there. One of them who is still there and gone through all of the corporate rigmarole and the changes and everything. And it is a great place for 95% of the people. I think there are certain people who don't fit in with that. And like a lot of business owners, I have read all of those books, like Surrounded by Idiots by Erickson. Like I've read The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. I've gone through trying to analyze what's wrong with the way I've worked. And I think I'm quite restless. I always want to be moving on to the next thing and the next thing. And the thing that's changed a lot of that, again, with Be a Bear, I think the reason that I've stayed at Be a Bear for the longest, surprisingly, because again, hands up, there were times that I was going to leave and put someone else in running it and just be like, I don't need to be on this day to day. But I've always been able to choose the people around us, SL, like senior leadership team level. And there are always people who really challenge me. And Lizzie, who has been working with me for about 4 years now, she oversees client services and operations at Be a Bear. She is the polar opposite to how I work. And I think there are definitely days that Lizzie absolutely hates me. There are probably days, respectfully to Lizzie, that I find some of the stuff we do quite frustrating. But hands up, if we didn't do it, we wouldn't have a business that operates the way it is. And there's similar kind of people across the team that have worked here in the past where it's always been like, they need to be different to the way I worked. I'm also not glamorizing. I don't think like everyone should work the way I've worked. I don't think it does work in a lot of businesses. I'm really proud of some of the stuff I did at Candy Kittens. I'm really, really proud of some of the stuff I did at Lab Bible in a short period of time. I'm still proud of the stuff I did at Facebook, despite not enjoying my whole time there. And then like at WMA, I had such a great level of support from like the founder of WMA. He just gave me a platform to try things and test things. And that was definitely a maturity stage in my life of realizing like I learned a lot about how I worked whilst at WMA, which is why I went back there and had a great second stint when I was there. It was like probably, the only reason I left there was Lab Bible was one of the fastest growing media brands at the time. And that was a cool opportunity. But I think that's the only one where I've been like, you have to move on to that job because it's great.
Right. So not to jump around the timeline then, but knowing that you feel you're highly unemployable, which is something we share. I think it's something many entrepreneurial people share and is why you wind up going your own path. But you are now, I assume, employed by Spin Group. So,
I am.
And it's been a year. So like, are you about to leave? Or you know, what's been different about, you know, kind of this acquisition process and being at Spin where it seemingly you are settled and happy, 1 + 1 = 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you know, one of the things that I have really, so there's two guys, Max and Alex, who founded Spin. They're very different people as well. The conversations with both of them, like Max Witcher, hands down, like pure energy, so great to go to conferences with. He's great to just like go for a coffee with if you need some downtime. Like we were in New York last year for Advertising Week New York. It's a good event. It's pretty intense. And we just sat down one night and we just had a beer together. And it was like, this is nice. This is chilled out now. And, you know, I think we're probably both texting our other halves and we're just kind of getting through it. But it's great having someone like that around. And then it's also really good having someone like Alex Bedini, who is our group CEO, who is a lot more structured in the way he thinks. And like yesterday, again, just super live example of this. I sent like an 8 or 9 minute voice note to Alex going through some of my thinking about where we're really doubling down on sports and sport media at the moment. And I sent him some of my thinking and I was a bit like, look, I don't really know where this is going. I'm trying to write it as an email. It doesn't make sense. Here's a voice note. And he takes it all on board and he comes back with like some other thoughts and he tests it and he pushes you in a different direction. And I think that it's a good place for someone like me because I am, as far as as like I get a paycheck like an employee now, but I also get given a platform to be entrepreneurial. I don't know what those two are thinking. There might be a day where they turn around and say, actually, do you know what? We don't need entrepreneurial. I always use the example of a landscape gardener versus someone who just comes and waters the plants. Maybe at some point they say, actually, we need someone to water the plants here. It's all fine now. But for now, they're letting me do some landscaping, which is the part I enjoy.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that continues. And yeah, that's what you want in these acquisition environments. I think it's honestly a thing that scares me. Not that we're looking to sell our agency, but it is probably the thing that freaks me out the most. We've actually bought agencies where the founder stuck around for 2 weeks and that was part of the deal. And it was like, once we transitioned, they were fully out. And I've said to myself, like, that is how it would have to be for me if I were to ever leave, because I truly think I am so unemployable that it just cannot work. But
I don't know if you find this. There's definitely that part, because I don't, again, like I am millennial. I'm assuming you're millennial as well. If you are Gen Z, I'm sorry.
No.
But on lots of levels. But there is a kind of a slight millennial guilt that I think is around, of like not being settled or being like accepting the fact that you are going to stay in a job for a period of time now. Whereas like earlier in a career, it feels like it's okay. Whereas now you're like, maybe, hey, do you know what? If I'm not happy, it's got to be me and I've got to go to therapy or career coaching or something. Did you find that as well?
I honestly think what it comes down to for me is, I speak about it on this podcast too often, but like the job that I had as a, like I started when I was 12 years old. I worked for this family run business right up until I founded the agency. And it was a very like entrepreneurial, true family led business where like you were also treated like family for better or worse. And I just thrived in that environment where I had at a young age an incredible amount of autonomy, not a lot of structure. Like I really did act as if it was like my own business, and probably to my detriment. And there's, the talk about therapy. So yeah, I think I've had to therapize, like, my level of investment there was significant. And, but it was from that place of having the feeling of true autonomy. And then other than that, like I even had started a couple of businesses, small things while I was working for them and going to college and university. But so just from a young age, it's like, this is how I've always earned a living. I actually kind of just don't know anything else. And it's not, I've had a deep dive. Like, it's not even about having a boss or being accountable to someone else or having deadlines or anything. I think for me, it comes down to two things. Like, I enjoy working in the most bizarre working structures imaginable. It's like you mix ADHD in there, which, I shouldn't also, I've not been diagnosed with ADHD, and I actually dislike when people say that. So whatever it is that how my brain works, I thrive in the like, oh, shit, this thing's due in 10 minutes. We better get it done now, even though you had 2 months to do it. And I just know that what I will deliver in that 10 minutes will be great. And I think that, as one small example, like, does not work for other people. If you're like in a corporate environment where it's like, what do you mean you have not started this thing and we're going to present in 10 minutes? Like, I just think even if it was, I would have to find a place that's purely outcome driven, because they would definitely not like the inputs. That's for sure. So yeah,
spot on. I think there's also that thing of like, there's just that element of like, some people just really thrive under that pressure. And I think for me, the entrepreneurial path, like having had a failed food business before launching Be a Bear, and in the background, not on LinkedIn or on the CV, like I ran club nights at university, because if we didn't have money, I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't buy food. And it was like, you kind of need those pressure points. And later in life, that does become things like self-imposed time scarcity. Or if you've got kids, like, I need to get stuff done because I want to go hang out with my kid, or I want to go fishing on the weekend, or I want to, go to the pub and get leathered watching some rubbish sports game. All of that sort of stuff,
Yeah. Well, my Instagram bio says agent of chaos, and it is what it is. Like, I have accepted it. And I think that's what I mean by like, there is no other career than entrepreneurship where you can say like proudly, I enjoy chaos. Because I think in any other environment, people are like, well, we actually don't like chaos. We like predictability, sustainability.
I want a nice spreadsheet that tells me this is how my wife works as well. Like everything's going to be planned out and it's perfect. And that's great. But then I come in like a hurricane and just ruin everything. And somewhere in between, we end up having a great life.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. In my case, my wife is basically a carbon copy of myself. So it's, it's just,
Wow.
it's a very interesting environment. And then we have two daughters, 6 and 8 years old. The 8-year-old is also just like us. And then the little one is like the polar opposite of all of us. And I'm like, those are the therapy bills. I'm like the most.
Yeah, you're never going to be able to fix that.
No, like she's the kid where like if we're on a vacation day 2, she's like, I want to go home. Like she's that kid, and the three of us are like, why do we have a home? Like why don't we just live in a van and travel around? Like the rest of us are like, why would you need a home? And she's like, I want to be home. So that is kind of anyway. Yeah. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure. So 2018, you've had all these roles, and then maybe it's because you realize you can't work for anyone else, but you found Be a Bear. So first off, why the name Be a Bear, and also what was the final push to say, okay, here's the corporate documents, like the business is launching, and I'm going to do this.
So when I was 17, my dad died, and it was obviously I'm 17. It was a big shock. But he used to always say this phrase: if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. And it was, I'm in the UK. We don't get grizzly bears here anymore, but I know obviously Canada are abundant. They're not abundant. They're around though, right? Anyway, it became like a little bit of a family phrase that everyone used to say all the time. And I had left Candy Kittens. I was going to freelance doing a few jobs for a little bit whilst trying to run my food business with my uncle. And we picked up this pretty good kind of freelance job for a while. It was exactly my sort of terms for how I wanted to work. I went into this company and I said, look, over the next 6 months, I'm going to help you turn X amount of money into X amount of money. The way we're going to do this is through some content marketing. Here's the business plan for how it works. And they were like, cool, yeah, when can you start? And we started and I worked on it and it was great. And one day the founder of that company said to me, you need more people to be able to do this. I've got lots of people who need this sort of work. And I was like, that's cool. And I was like, well, can you introduce them to me? And he was like, but you can't do all of it by yourself. He was like, you should start an agency. So I walked out and I called my fiance at the time. She's now my wife. It's not someone separate. That would be an interesting twist in the story. I called my fiance at the time and I said, look, just had this meeting. He said, maybe I should start an agency. And she said, well, if you're going to be a bear. And I'm obsessed with agencies, by the way. Like I was always really, really obsessed with, I always wanted to work after being at Psycho and getting into the world of media. I wanted to work at like BBH or AMV or like one of those like cool creative or advertising agencies. So I called a friend of mine who's an illustrator and I said, look, I want you to draw a picture of a bear for me. The bear needs to be curious. It needs to be like ideally black and white. It's going to be a logo for something. I just want to see how it looks. And I want him standing up. I don't want it aggressive. I don't want it to look like it's roaring or anything. And I said, I'm going to send you a couple of logos I like. And I sent the one of them was the sheep from BBH. And he sent me back this black outline of a bear. He sent me 4 or 5 different images, but this one black outline of a bear standing up. And embarrassingly, I've got it tattooed on my arm right there.
Yeah.
I got that done when we first turned over. We did our first £1 million year. And I was like, great, going to get a tattoo the minute we hit that number. But I got him to do this image. And the minute I saw it, I was like, cool, we're going to call the agency Be a Bear. And it's just going to be about helping brands build audiences, be loud and all this stuff. And we set it up. And I think we got our first employee about 4 months. I set it up. It's always I set it up. But 4 months later, I interviewed 3 or 4 people. Had one of them. He ended up staying with us for 4 years. And it was just awesome. Like from the start, from the first hire, again, going back to the thing of scarcity. When you have pressure to pay someone else's bills, oh my God, that just changed everything. His name was Joe. The minute Joe came in, I was terrified. Didn't take a salary for like 2 or 3 months. Just made sure I could bring as much business in as possible to build up the buffer that we could hire another person after Joe. Then we hired Millie, then we hired Claire, then we hired Emily. And it kind of spiraled. And that turned into, I think at our peak, we had about 44 employees at Be a Bear.
Yeah.
Even about 30 now. But yeah, it was all based on one conversation, one phone call with my wife, and then asking someone to draw a bear. And because I liked the picture, I decided we were going to do it. It's that impulsive.
Well, That may be one of the best agency founding stories. So let's go back to you being an agency nerd. I am also a self-described agency nerd. I mean, it takes one to start a
Yeah,
podcast
of
where
course.
you do is interview agency people. But yeah, same thing when I was first in college. Like I would spend my time in Canada reading marketing magazines, basically the drum in Canada. And yeah, that's like what I would spend my time doing. I binge watched Mad Men
Obviously.
and then decided it was like, this is what I'm going to do, the racism, sexism, and misogyny aside. So it was, but yeah, that was the game plan. But in terms of a founding story, I think that is probably the best one we've heard on this show. And something else we share in common. So our parent company brand I launched last year is called Ardell. It's actually named after my mother, and because she also passed away about 5 years ago. So, I appreciate this, like your legacy carrying on for your family, and the fact that it's actually like a meaningful. It is a great agency name, and the fact that it's meaningful is really powerful.
Do you know what was so our first, like, again, bit of a tangent on it, but it was a very weird name to communicate at the start. Two things that came up, or still earlier on came up a lot more, because we worked with a lot of PR companies then around like the fashion space and music space. In LGBTQ world, a bear is a very different thing.
Yeah.
So that came up in a lot of conversations, and someone was like, "So are you?" And I was like, "No, that's not what it's about. It's about being big and grizzly." And they were like, "Okay." And I was like, "No, seriously." So that was one thing that came up. But the other thing that comes up a lot is Build-A-Bear. And Build-A-Bear Workshop is apparently, I actually had a podcast about this not long ago. Someone fact checked me on this, but it's some of the most lucrative stock you can buy in Build-A-Bear. It goes through the roof because like people love teddy bears, and parents go and buy teddy bears, and grandparents do. So many people have over the years applied to jobs at Build-A-Bear, but accidentally got through to us. And I'm fairly certain some of our best employees thought they were going somewhere else.
That's
we always think like, are we going to officially just change to BAB and just have the bear as the logo? Maybe in the future. Everyone calls us bad, but anyway. But yeah, I quite like the Build-A-Bear accident, that one day someone's going to book me for a panel somewhere. I'd be really disappointed when I
you should just do, and you should absolutely do it and just show up. And yeah, it's like one of our agency brands within our group is called Craft&Crew, and everyone assumes we're a brewery, and it is just very funny because when we assigned the name, it had everything to do with like aviation and nothing to do with craft brewing, and I didn't even like make the connection. And the fact that that's where most people go to, like if you say, I have a business called Craft&Crew, which was the main business before we put the parent company in place, it was like, yeah, everyone's like, oh, how long have you been a brewer? Like, well, apparently it's today. It started today. Yeah,
you need the beer offshoot that just goes out. You know, just send a case of beer every year to clients.
That actually would be funny. Now that we're
brand it up.
No, we have like, because our brands were like Craft&Crew Media Propulsion Laboratory, which is like a JPL jet propulsion. So it's all like that related. And then the fact that people landed on craft beer was funny. Okay, so at BAB, when you mentioned getting the tattoo when you had your first £1 million year, that aside, what was the moment? It was a project or a client win or a specific hire where you were like, okay, this is like a real thing. And it's kind of like from that moment on, you were like, yeah, this business will have legs and longevity.
That's a really good question. When I suppose, when does it stop scaring you is the part. Like when do you not feel like it's going to fall apart overnight? I think so. There's my first big contract with Viacom CBS. I printed it and I still have it on my desk. And I remind myself every now and then when I'm having like a shit day or we miss a client, because now like at the start, you're pitching things for a few £1,000s a year, a month. Then you start pitching things at the 10s, and then you start pitching things in the 20s, and the things get bigger and bigger, right? And when I have pretty rubbish days sometimes, because we miss out on something big, I remind myself, like, genuinely pick up the physical of that contract. I'm quite haptic like that. I need to like touch things and like understand it. But I think that was probably the moment that I realized we were in that competitive space, and we stopped being kind of like, we stopped working with companies which were other people's side hustles. So early on, there was one company we worked with who did like silicon pet tags, and that's nice, but that's not a full-time business for someone. That's something they do on the side. And we worked with a company that did, trying to think, like a leather goods company, and it was good business, but it was part-time for the person. When we started having to get like purchase orders, that was when a client says to you, "Oh, I need to speak to finance to raise a purchase order," that's when in my head I was like, "This is a proper company now. We have purchase. I have contracts. We had a DocuSign account that cost us, like, I remember when we first had DocuSign, it was something absurd, like 118 GBP a year. And I was just like, that's a lot of money to spend on DocuSign. Why are we spending this? But then now I'm looking at it like, yeah, that was probably the moment where I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, that we need to track paper, because I can't just send over a PDF and then stick it in a Google Drive, right?
So if you were to go back, you'd said, you gave that great description of what you wanted to do after the English Lit degree. So if you could go back to that person and say, hey, here's where I'm going to land, decade and a half later, what do you think that younger version of Max says? Are they impressed? Are they happy? Are they disappointed? What do you think their take is?
Unfortunately, honestly, I think younger me would have been a little bit disappointed, because younger me wanted to smoke cigarettes, drink French wine, and wear silk scarves and like bum around Europe and talk about things that were beautiful. And then also that person is what ends up making it, like, again, back to loving agencies. Like, if you like creative work, you fall in love with the art of it. And like, I think I have a very frustrated creative within me, who's not very good at being creative, if that makes sense. So like, I'm definitely more of a strategist than a creative, if that's the right way of looking at it. So I also think if I could tell my younger self one thing, they might be a bit disappointed in me, but the piece of advice that I would give them is, you are going to get so upset and you're going to get so disappointed about different things throughout your career, and you've got to take it all as learnings. Like, looking back at stuff I did now where I was annoyed about either losing clients, missing out on briefs, not being picked on the right team, right? So not to be in the team that got to go and work on the really cool project, or going home and feeling like, I remember when I was at Psycho, I talk about this quite openly with like colleagues, and particularly young colleagues. There were days where I would go home. I was living at my mum's house at the time, and I would cry about how much of a shit day I had at work. I was in my early 20s. I was in a room with some of the best creative minds producing one of the biggest TV shows, which was The X Factor and Got Talent. We were on the global team that was also covering America's Got Talent and Asia's Got Talent. So all of these global brands have got talent. And sometimes I felt like my ideas weren't good enough. And I'm like, do you know what? The fact that you're essentially in the sand pit at these big meetings, like, maybe your ideas weren't good enough, and that's absolutely fine, because that's what's going to help you form those ideas now that you get to go and work on with like Channel 5 or MTV or IMG, Comedy Central, all these people. And now I've built up the resilience that if my idea isn't good enough, it's absolutely fine with me. Doesn't matter, but it might spark someone else off in the team. So I would tell younger self, I'd be like, yes, you can be disappointed in me, but also all of what you're doing now is actually really, really beneficial. Let yourself get sad about it. It just shows you care.
Well, Max, I think that is a great place to wrap our conversation for today. I'm not lying. I think we're going to have a follow-up where all we do is explore all the ways we are basically the same person. So I will look forward to getting that scheduled in.
Definitely.
Because it could have been a 2-hour exploration of our, even when you said I'm a frustrated creative, where I actually am truly more of a strategist, but like inside I'm a frustrated creative. I was like, I'm going to go to my therapist and be like, I just unlocked some of my issues. Here we go. So anyway, I really appreciate the conversation. Congrats on all your success. Hopefully you'll stick around at Spin Group. It'll be the longest place you've ever worked. And just grateful for you, and hope all the best for Bab in the future.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the follow-up, and we can have a big chat about being frustrated together.
Journey Map is hosted by me, Dave Hale, and produced by the website production company Craft&Crew. To learn more, visit us at craftandcrew.ca. Thanks for taking this journey with us.